Hello guys, and welcome to the fourth part of my tutorial on how to create an inventory system for the Blender game engine. And let's see what we have done so far. If you remember, in the last part we had created a separate blend file which we named weapons, and we had created some simple meshes that represent the 3D models of the weapons that will be in the game. And specifically, we had created four different objects: a short sword, an axe, a bow, and a pile of arrows. And we had named them accordingly to the name that they have in our databases. The short sword has the name W301. The short axe, the battle axe, is identified as W302, and so on for the bow and the pile of arrows. And just to remind you, this is the database of our weapons, and these are the identifiers. And what we did next is that we went in our main Blender file, and we wrote a script that adds these dropped items on the ground on locations that we have specified in another database, the db dropped items database. The db dropped database contains all the dropped items which are occurrences, instances of our weapons, and furthermore we have specified the coordinates of the location that we want them to appear in our game. And one more thing, we have added this field here that defines whether these dropped items will appear on the screen or not. And we had explained that if you pick a dropped item, you don't want it to reappear if you reload the scene or if you load the game. So we have this trigger too that takes the value true if we want the dropped item to appear, or false if we want it not to appear. So if we run our game, okay, we can see that the dropped items appear. What we are going to do today is to pick up these items from the ground and add them to our inventory. We will not visualize our inventory, but we will create another database that will contain the contents of the inventory. And in the next part we are going to visualize our inventory and see how these items will be added in our inventory. So for now we will have to make some slight modifications in our scripts. First of all, starting from the init script, which script is attached to our camera, to our main camera. And this script, as we have already said, is executed at the start of our game, and we will add some more stuff here. First of all, when we run our game, we want our mouse cursor to appear. So to do this, we have to import another module which is named rasterizer, and then we have to add this command, rasterizer dot show mouse and the value 1 inside brackets. Having done this, and when you press P, now you see that the 3D cursor, the mouse cursor, is visible and you can move it freely. One other thing I'm going to add in my init file is here in my function, my libload function, which if you remember loads a blend file and loads the library of a different blend file, and I have used it to load the library of my weapons blend file, which contains the 3D models of the weapons. And the thing I'm going to add here is you can see that the libload function has two parameters, the name of the blend file and what we want to add from the lib file. Here in this example we wanted to add the whole scene. We have other options for this parameter, and we could add just the meshes of the blend file or the actions that are contained in the blend file. And depending on the case, we may need to import different things. So I'm going to create I'm going to make I'm going to add another parameter here in my function, which will be called type, and I will replace the scene word here with type, and I'm going to have to add it here what type of import I want to do. Okay, so nothing has changed. I'm doing this for occasions that I may want to import another type, a scene or an action or a mesh type, depending on the occasion. Okay, now having done this, I'm finished with the modifications for the init script. So what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to make some more modifications in my spawn dropped item script. Okay, what this script does is that it searches the dictionary dropped items, the nested sub-dictionary dropped items of my global database, and this dictionary contains all the dropped items as we have seen them in our database here. And what it does is that, I'm sorry, this one is correct, it checks if an item is true, which means that will be displayed, and then it moves a special object, specifically an empty, that I have added on the 3D view, and this empty also this script is also attached to this empty. You can see it here. I have selected the empty, and I have attached the script controller to an always sensor. The always sensor doesn't have a true level pulse mode, which means that will be launched only once in the beginning of the game, and it will add all the dropped objects. So what I have done here is that I move the empty to the positions that can be found here in my dropped items locations, and then when it's moved in the positions, I add the object, which is defined again here, and this makes these objects appear on the screen. What the problem is that I need an extra identifier in my 3D view, which will specify that this is an object that I can pick. So what I want is that these newly created dropped items to have a property which will specify that are items that can be picked up. And if I don't do this, what I want to do is to move my mouse cursor over a dropped item and then click on it and add it to my inventory. If I don't specify which items will have this ability and can be clicked, then this means that I can click every item, every model in my game and pick it up. But that is not the case. We have other props we can't pick up. So what I want is that every added object here to have an identifier, a property, a game property, which will separate them from other objects that are not pickable. And if I want to do this, here I have used the scene add object command to add my dropped items, but I'm going to change this. I won't use the scene add object, but I'm going to add an object actuator, an edit object actuator, and I'm going to connect my Python controller to this actuator. I'm going to rename it to spawn, and then I'm going to have to declare it in my script. So in order to declare an actuator in your script, you have to assign a variable to it. Let's say that this variable will be called spawn, and then we write controller actuators spawn, and this spawn is this spawn here. So now my script may identify this actuator. And what I'm going to write is first of all, I'm going to specify which object I want to be added, and then I'm going to write spawn, which is the name of the actuator, object equals to ID obj, and I'm going to delete this line because I don't need it anymore. And then I'm going to activate the spawn actuator. So let's see if everything. No, we have a problem here, and let me track it. We have ID and we have activated. Let me use my reference file. I have everything. I have prepared some files for me. Spawn instant add object. Yes, that's what I'm going to add here. Okay. So I'm not going to activate my controller with this command because it's somehow slow and it creates problems in my file when I execute the script. Instead I'm going to write spawn instant add object and press P. Okay, you can see that everything seems to be working normally. We have no changes from the last script. Okay, and why did I do this? It's because I want for every dropped item that is added on my scene, I want to assign a new property, a property that will define that this object is pickable, can be picked. And how am I supposed to do this? Since I'm going to create various occurrences of, let's say, the pile of arrows dropped item, and I have to somehow identify this pile of arrows. The problem is that these items will have the same object name, so I can't add the game property manually later because it will be difficult to track which items are the dropped items. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to assign this variable to each dropped item uh, immediately after its appearance on the scene. So now that I immediately after I add the dropped items, I'm going to use another command which is called let me see my reference file, sorry. Okay, spawn object last created. Okay, this gives me the last object that was created by the instant add object command here. And this object last created, I'm going to assign it a new variable which is called pickable. And this variable will have the value, let's say 1. It doesn't matter what value uh, you will give to this variable, you will assign to this variable, because what we are going to look for when we check if an item is pickable is the existence of this variable and not its value. And the rest of the items, the ground for example, won't have this property, but the spawn items, the dropped items, will have this variable. So okay, I see I have something is going wrong. Okay, x in line 18, maybe I don't need this. Yes, that was the problem. No brackets here. So I think we are done with the modifications of our existing scripts, and now we are going to work on how we can click on these items and pick them up. When we pick an item by clicking on it, what we want is to make it disappear from the screen, and we want it to appear on the inventory. And for the inventory, we need to create another database, which I'm going to name inv from inventory, and I'm going to add values as we have done so many times. id obj and equipped. Okay, what these three headers mean: first of all, this is the slot of our inventory. I'm going to create an 8 slot inventory. You can create more slots or less if you like. Okay, so these 8 slots will have as identifier the words slot 1 to slot 8. And here in the second column, I'm going to put all the items that will be, all the icons that will all the weapons, all the items that are going to be added in each slot. Okay, in the beginning I want my inventory to be empty, so I'm going to write this word empty, empty, and I'm using this special word to specify that my slots are empty. Whenever I want to store an item in a slot, this keyword empty will be changed with the ID of the weapon that I want to store in the slot. And finally, I have another column here which specifies whether the weapon that is stored in the slot, whether it is equipped or not. Okay, in the beginning it's going to take the false value, and whenever I equip a weapon, this value will change to true. And why I'm going to do there are many reasons why I'm doing this. Maybe because I want to make some calculations in my game, or maybe because I want not to be able to drop an equipped item. Anyway, it's a good thing to have which weapon is equipped, to having specified which weapon is equipped every time. So let's export this database to a CSV file. Okay, yes, and let's see if the text file is created normally. Okay, you see that it's created normally, and what we are going to do next is we are going to import this database too. So here I'm to write db import in CSV, and let's name it inv. Okay, now let's print our global dictionary to see if it was added in the global dictionary, and press P and escape and check your console. Okay, let me see. You see that the slots are added. Slot 6. Okay, it starts from here. The dictionary, it starts from here. The main key is inv, and the nested dictionary starts from here to the end. Okay, and it contains all the keys and values. Okay, for slot 4 we have its id obj if it is equipped, and so on. So we have imported our inventory. Okay, now for some action, what we are going to do next is actually picking up the weapons. And for this I'm going to select my main camera and create a new script, which I'm going to name main script. Okay, this main script will be repeated, will be executed in every game cycle, and it's going to perform some operations that are needed to be performed for each game cycle. And to do this we have to add another always sensor, but with true level triggering mode. Okay, this means that it will send a pulse to execute the script in each game cycle. Okay, we enter the main script here. Okay, so now that the main script will be executed once in every cycle of the game. Furthermore, I'm going to add another sensor. I'm going to add a mouse sensor and change to mouse over any, and I'm going to rename the sensor to MO to make it something more simple. So let's start writing our code again. First of all, we are going to import the BG module. From BG we are going to import the logic submodule. I'm going to assign my GD variable to the logic global dict, and then we are going to write some more things. First of all, assign the controller, as you know, get current controller, and then the owner of the controller, which is the object, the camera object. One more thing I'm going to add is a variable that will give me the current scene. Get current controller. Okay, and I think it's enough with assigning variables. Now no, we have to assign the sensor to the mouse over sensor, so it may be recognized and read from inside of our script. So MO equals to control sensors MO. Okay, now I'm going to track whether my mouse sensor is over an object, and furthermore I'm going to track whether the left click mouse is pressed. Okay, to track if the left mouse click has happened, I'm going to write if logic mouse, let me cancel my reference file because I can't remember exactly what I had written in my main. Okay, yes, logic mouse events. Now I remember. If logic mouse events, okay, this events command here contains all the events that relate to the mouse control. And these events, you will wonder where will I find which these events are. I advise you to visit this site, tutorials for blender3d.com, and go here where it says BG Python 2.6, and here where it says mouse menu events. Okay, and here you have all the codes, the code names for these events, and you notice that for the left button Blender identifies number 189 as a left button click event. So if we go back to our script, we add if logic mouse events 189 equals to 1. This means if left click button is pressed, and what we want is that the hit object sorry, we want to check if we have a hit object, our mouse is over an object, and to do this we are going to add this here, mo hit object, I'm sorry, and mo hit object. This means if I have clicked if I have left clicked my mouse and my mouse cursor is over an object, and that's because mouse can be I may hover my mouse over this empty area here, and here in this area it does not detect an object, and it's going to give me an error. So I want it to detect that my mouse is over an it's over an object. Next, what I'm going to check is whether this item is pickable. Remember that we had added the property pickable to all of our spawned objects. Okay, with this line we had added the pickable property to these objects, and we are going to do this with a hash attr, if I remember correct. No, we are going to check with this line here. Okay, this is my reference file because it has been a long time since I have written Python code, so please excuse me if I don't remember some things. I have to use my reference, and this is the complete text file. Don't get mixed with the one we are writing here. I'm using it for as a reference, just to remember and be correct to whatever I tell you. I don't want to make mistakes and to repeat things again and again. So that's why sometimes I have to cancel the reference file. Anyway, what I'm going to check is if there is a pickable in mo hit object. Okay, so I'm going to copy and explain the code from here. Okay, we check if the hit object, the object that our mouse cursor is over, if it has the property pickable. If that's the case, we are looping in the inventory dictionary, which contains the slots of our inventory here. Okay, so we search our slots to find an empty slot. And how we do this? We check if the slot has the empty keyword. This means that our slot is empty and doesn't have an and that no item is stored in this slot. Okay, in this case, what we are doing is that we write that we change the empty keyword with a string of the object that was hit. And remember that these objects have taken for names the identifiers we have given them in our weapons file. They take these names W1, 2, 3, 4, and which are the identifiers in our weapons database. Don't get mixed, this is our dropped items database, but I'm using it to remind you what keywords I'm talking about. And finally, what we do after we have updated our inventory dictionary, what we do next is we delete this object from the screen, which means that we have picked it up. So in a few steps we check if the item is pickable, and then we loop through the inventory values. We check whether a slot is empty, and if a slot is empty, we store the hit object name in the slot. And finally, we delete this object from the 3D view, and this keyword, the break keyword here, is used to stop the for loop, to end the for loop, because we don't need it to repeat, because if we leave it to repeat, it's going to add multiple occurrences of the item in our inventory. So if I press P and I click on the items, you see that they disappear. And if I want to check whether these items are stored in my inventory, I'm going to print in my console the inventory gdinv and close these brackets here and press P, and let's click OK. Now we have a problem and I haven't saved the file. Okay, now I think we won't have a problem. Okay, thankfully this did not affect. Let's save our file, and if we run again, okay, the only problem is that I can't make the system console appear, but I think if I close and reopen the file, press toggle system console. Okay, we have our console back. For a moment I thought that I had lost everything. Thankfully nothing happened. So if I press P and if I pick, for some reason it crashes. I'm going to have to check it. Probably it crashes because we print the inventory. Let's check again. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Let's delete this, press P and click and click. Yes, probably it's because we are printing the inventory again and again. So I'm going to add the print command gdinv here. Let's save, press P and OK, and this one here and escape, and let's check the console. Okay, here we have it. Let's check which slot. Okay, here, see here that slot 6 has the weapon 4, that slot 7 has the weapon 4 too, and that the other slots are empty. This means that we have stored the picked items into 2 slots. And what we need to do next is we will have to visualize our inventory and see that these and write the code that will make the items appear on the slots. For now our inventory is imaginary. It's an inventory in code. Let me repeat it with picking up other objects. Okay, the sword, the bow, the axe, and 2 arrows. Okay, and check our console. Okay, we see that the 6th slot has the first weapon, which, if you remember, is the sword. The slot 7 has the 3rd weapon, which, if I remember correctly, is the bow. Slot 4 has the 2nd weapon, which is the axe. Slot 5 has the arrows. Slot 2 has the arrows too, and the rest of the slots are empty. And this is our imaginary inventory, which is stored in a dictionary. And what we are going to do is we are going to use this data here, this information here from our dictionary to visualize our inventory. But I'm not going to do this right now. I'm going to leave this for the next part of our inventory. One other thing I'm going to have to create in one of the next tutorials, in the next part, is remember that these piles of arrows here, okay, remember that their quantity was not a single arrow. These 3D items represent tenths of arrows. And let me explain better. Let's open our weapons database. Okay, a pack of arrows consists of 10 arrows, and I have assigned 30 arrows as a maximum quantity in my weapons database. This means that any time I pick the arrows, I pick an object of the 3D model. I click on the 3D model of a pack of arrows, and then 10 arrows must be stored in a single slot in my inventory. And if I pick another set of arrows, then the new 10 arrows are going to be added to the previous 10 one, giving me 20 arrows stored in a single slot, in a single inventory slot. And if I pick a third pack of arrows, then I'm going to have 30 arrows in a slot, and this is my limit for an inventory slot. If I pick a fourth pack of arrows, then I'm going to have two slots, one with 30 arrows and a second one that contains 10 arrows. And if I run my game as it is now, you see that I have four 3D models, four instances of the pack of arrows 3D model. So what would happen, what would normally happen, was to click here and add 10 arrows in a slot. If I click here, that would increase them to 20 arrows in a slot, then 30 arrows in a slot, and that's my limit. And if I click the fourth object, I wouldn't have 40 arrows in a slot, but it would occupy a new slot, and it would add 10 arrows to the slot. But if I check my console, okay, we see that the arrows, each 10th arrow, each 10th of arrow, occupies a slot. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different slots occupied, and I don't want this. So in another part I'm going to fix this problem too. But for now we're going to stop here, and I hope that these tutorials teach you some things and you learn from these tutorials. I know that language is an obstacle, because it's difficult for me to talk and think what I have to write, and with English not being my mother language, I have many difficulties expressing what I want to say sometimes. But thankfully there are comments. You can add your own comments and questions, and then I'm going to have as much time I want to answer you and make you understand what I want to say in each case. And so for now we are going to stop. Thank you again for having the patience to listen and to watch my tutorial. And until the next time, have fun and keep practicing.